if you don't set habits and routines for yourself, you can really quickly start spiraling into chaos.
Why do we do anything? Right? Why do we do anything at all? And the answer to that is we're running away from something and we're running towards something, right? We're normally running away from something we don't want, some sort of pain, or we're running towards something that we really want.
Welcome to the Chief Aim podcast. This is your weekly dose of real experiences, insights, strategies, and action steps for entrepreneurs who want to build and are building something incredible. All right, welcome back to the show. Glad you're here. I'm Jason Graystone.
And I'm Sebastian Bates.
And we're back again. So following the first episode where I was talking about performance versus lifestyle businesses, we had a lot of good comments. We got into a lot of great conversations with people over that. And what we want to do here is kind of take you on a journey of what we feel is like the most important nitty-gritty starting kind of on the ropes with the business and just getting started, coming out of the trenches. And we bang our heads together and think, what are some of the most common questions and common problems and, the things that people go through people's heads when they're starting or they're stuck and they need to get out of a hole. And obviously, performance versus lifestyle is important because you need to weigh that up. You need to have clarity over what direction you're taking the business. But the biggest one, I think, Seb, is motivation and discipline, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things, right? When all the mentoring I do with business owners or the chats I have with entrepreneurs, it always comes up. How do you stay motivated? What is it that motivates you? And it's like everyone's chasing motivation, right? And And it's interesting when you see that within yourself, when you understand motivation and what actually is motivation and what is discipline and the two differences, it becomes really apparent when that shows up in your life. So it's a really good idea to separate them and understand what is what and why it's there.
Totally. And I think I don't know where you think we should begin, but I kind of, from my own standpoint, I mean, I'm in a position where I don't need to actually actively work or, I get a lot of income from investment returns and, my trading account, and I don't actually have to do that. And the interesting thing about that is people say, well, you got all the free time in the world, and I would argue that when you are in a position, so even when you get your business to where it wants to be and you free up some time, you're going to need to be more disciplined then than you are now potentially, because if you've got all the free time in the world, what do you do? Like your calendar, if you don't set habits and routines for yourself, you can really quickly start spiraling into chaos. You can really start slipping and on this kind of slopey journey towards just losing meaning, losing, purpose. And everyone wants to have fulfillment. Everyone wants to have meaning. And when you don't actually have the discipline to curate your day and fill your time with what you want to do, you end up just in this, you feel lost. And it's something that people don't see coming. But obviously this show is all about giving you the truth from both sides of the, both ends, because the last thing you want to do is have a fantasy about something and then you reach it and then you feel depressed because it wasn't what you thought it was. And a lot of that is down to just having solid discipline from day one, discipline to do your tasks in your business, discipline to have a routine, disciplined on your own time management. I don't know what your thoughts are, Seb, on discipline.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, the question is, how do you stay motivated, or what is motivation? And I think, why do we do anything? Right? Why do we do anything at all? And the answer to that is we're running away from something and we're running towards something. Right, we're normally running away from something we don't want, some sort of pain, or we're running towards something that we really want, or we feel we need in our life, that we feel is a high priority. And there's always this balance between the two. And a lot of the conversations out there right now are that actually the running away from energy is more powerful. That energy is more powerful than the running towards.
Interesting.
It's like, do you want that extra meal? You imagine like you're a caveman back in the day and you're in your cave and it's like, well, you could have that extra meal, or you could run away from the immediate threat which is going to kill you. And really the benefit isn't as strong as the running away from the pain, right? So I think humans are hardwired to run away from danger or the negative result than running towards.
We're more fearful than greedy.
Right, exactly. And what's really interesting is, when people ask, someone like Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg, or what does that motivate these people to build billion-dollar businesses? And from my perspective, I think that typically people like that rarely have an amazing balance or harmony in their life. To do something that extreme, even athletes, right, who are at the top of their game, to do something that extreme, you've normally got some sort of deep-rooted pain or insecurity or expectation you place in yourself to constantly do the sleepless nights, to constantly push yourself, to constantly take risk, because it's never enough. Nothing you do is ever enough, and you've constantly got to be somewhere and do something. So I think, first of all, it's understanding that motivation is actually pain, and understanding that pain isn't bad. People constantly search for happiness, right? And what I find is that people who are constantly searching for happiness, what are the things that make me the most happy? I want to do more of that and all this sort of stuff, are typically the least happy people I've met. And I kind of feel like a lot of that comes down to these people pin everything on the end result of being happy, rather than seeking meaning and experiences from the life and the time they've got. So for me, there's a lot to be said about motivation actually being uncomfortable and not always feeling good. Motivation can show up as anxiety. Motivation can show up as you're terrified of something bad happening. So while it feels good, sometimes if you want to get the most motivated, you've got to create a stress in your life that puts you in a position where you have no choice but to achieve, right? And maybe that's a different perspective to a lot of people when it comes to how do I get motivated. And get yourself in trouble, find something to run away from.
Back against the wall,
Right, but I mean that's the reality, right? That's the reality. When it comes to the human experience. So maybe it's something a lot of people haven't thought about.
This is a quick shout out to the sponsor of this show, Shield, who help us deliver this podcast along with all the social media that goes with it to help us get it out to more people, which leaves us to focus on just creating more great conversations. If you want to start, delegate, or optimize your social media or podcast, or if you want to build your very own online course or program, get in touch with the team at shieldglobal.io. Yeah, motivation's the driver. And I think a lot of it, and discipline's kind of the habit, the routine, sticking to the thing. And there's an argument that you might need motivation to have to kind of have the habits and routine. But here's my take. Everyone's got a discipline. Everyone's got a discipline. And the discipline is whatever you would choose to do if you didn't have to work, or what you're known for. Or if I ask people what you're good at or what they call you for when they need advice, what is that thing? That is your discipline. You've got a discipline there. That, for a footballer, it's kicking a ball. For a boxer, it's punching a bag. Or, for someone who's good with money and finances, that's their discipline. Some people, it's just their kids. And everyone's got a discipline. It's just a lot of people seem to chase some other discipline that they think that they would do better off in, purely because they haven't figured out how to monetize their own discipline or live their life through their own discipline and still be able to pay for their lifestyle, which is obviously the ultimate goal. Motivation, on the other hand, you need a lot more motivation, if you try to choose something outside of your discipline, your natural gifted discipline. It's like if you're watching motivation videos on YouTube, that's because you're trying to do something that your body is literally telling you don't want to do this.
We all love a motivational video with some American in the background, making us feel amazing about ourselves and you can do it and all this sort of stuff, right? And everyone loves it. And they get millions of views on YouTube. But the reason for that is they're tapping into what is a core element of human mindset, which is you release dopamine, right? One of the things that I found fascinating was we actually release the same amount of dopamines or the feel-good hormones or whatever when we talk about our goals as actually achieving them. So it's much easier as a human just to talk about the things you want to do and talk about the goals or watch a motivational video, which is the same thing, as achieving it. You get the same warm, fuzzy feeling as you would if you actually achieved it. But for me, motivation is often really necessary for taking massive action, right? You reach a point in your life where you don't want to tolerate being overweight anymore or not having an income anymore or being in that relationship anymore. And you reach the tipping point. And now you take massive action, right? You're like, I'm going to leave that person, or I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to, not I'm going to not have alcohol anymore, or I'm going to really smash the business, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And typically we know what we need to do, right? But we like to find out from books and podcasts and all that sort of stuff what to do, even though we know what to do. You know how to lose weight, stop eating as much and move your body more. But that's as simple as that, right? But we don't do it because we want to be told what to do. But I think that's an interesting element of the human mind, because having accountability and someone doing that, you can then manipulate that and actually have that in your life, right? Which is the way I live. I build accountability around me, and I think that I think it's really interesting, right? Massive action is that turning point. It's like bang! Now I'm going to do that thing that I need to do to make the change. I've had enough. And I'm now making the change. And people who go through your program all the time, they've reached that turning point, so they take massive action. They sign up, right? But then discipline comes in. And discipline, for me, isn't massive action. It's consistency with daily habit routines. It's consistently showing up and doing the things you say you're going to do. So when you're in that massive action motivational mode, you write a list of stuff you need to do. Discipline is actually getting it done, right? Discipline is saying to yourself, right, I'm going to do these 3 things every single day. And the second you don't do one of those things, you actually lose self-confidence, because you're starting to say to yourself that you don't do the things you promised yourself that you're going to do. And I've taken that to the extreme where I'm like, if I say to someone I'm going to do something, I make sure I do it, because that's my personal reputation. And some of my friends are like, it's okay, we don't need to do it. And I'm like, well, no, you don't understand. This isn't about you anymore. This is about me, right?
This is about me being a failure as a father to my kids.
Exactly. Like, I can't live with myself if we don't go to dinner with this other couple that we promised to do on a school night because I said I was going to do it, right? So for me, it's really a case of sticking to those things, and that builds up reliability and confidence in, you say you're going to do it, you get it done. And and I think I'm very cautious of what I agree to, but the people around me know if I say I'm going to do it, it's happening. And so discipline
I know that as well.
You know that as well, yeah. So discipline is consistency, and motivation is often massive action. But one of the biggest traps that a lot of people fall into, right, and I see this all the time, is they go from book, self-help book or podcast, to book, to book, to book, without implementing anything, because it feels
Shelf
good.
development.
Right, shelf development. I've never heard that before. Shelf development, I love it. Because it's such a buzz, right? You read a new book and you're like, oh man, this is amazing, all this is great, and then the self-development book, whatever it is, cool, don't implement anything. I wonder what else I could read, what's the next thing? And the question I always ask everyone, and they always ask me, I've read that book you suggested, what should I read next? And I say, well, what have you implemented? Tell me 3 things you've actually done from that book. Like, well, I haven't done it yet, and I will in the future. Well, you're not ready for the next book. Do everything in that book, right? In martial arts, we say...
And if you was motivated, you would know what book to read, right? Because you just geek out. Your whole life is spent going, right, I've got to figure this out, and now I've got to go, and you don't ask those sorts of questions. You are motivated. If you're motivated, you're motivated. So asking the person who's naturally motivated in that discipline, who's already achieved the result, they didn't ask questions. They just went and they figured it out, and they spent every waking hour trying to geek out on the stuff. If you're then going, spoon feed me the next book, the next book, the next book, you're not motivated. Like, that's a signal to go, perhaps this isn't something I'm motivated to do. I was going to say, but going back to what you said about massive action, it does all depend on a shift in values. Like, if you love eating loads of crap food and drinking loads of beer and what have you, and the doctor then says, look, you're going to have a heart attack, your motivation will shift to then becoming, right, I need to get healthy, and you'll get the running shoes out. And
because you're running from something. Do whatever it takes. Running from something.
The motivation's always there, right? It's just... In
that great example, right, the motivation to get a 6-pack isn't as motivating as the running away from the heart attack, right? It's like the power of negativity or being scared is so useful. It's hard to manufacture, but because no one wants to do it because it's uncomfortable, right? That goes back to the whole motivation. Motivation is scary. No one wants that. But it's interesting because I see people sign up for courses as well. They pay £10,000 or £5,000 for an expensive course because they reach that turning point, massive action, motivation, and then they start the course. And I know you've seen this with your own clients who start the course, right, with TOF, and they want to make a change, and then they're, what's over there? The bright, shiny object syndrome, and then they start something else. and they never finish it. And something we say in martial arts is, that simplicity is the key to brilliance. Bruce Lee quote. I say it all the time because ultimately, if you have one mentor, one way of thinking, with one set of instructions, you're more likely to follow through and actually get it done. And if you just say to yourself, I'm not going to go on to the next thing until I complete this thing, you'll implement everything and you actually get to the way you want to go faster. It's that the Matrix with the lady in the red dress walking past and distracting you, and you turn around and it's actually the agent with the gun, because that's the one thing you shouldn't be looking at. The one thing that's distracting you, right, is the next course, right. And it's holding you back from what you could really go on to achieve. But having that discipline is laser focus to the consistency and the things you said you want to stick to. So it's a really fascinating subject, for me, and
definitely.
And it's one of the biggest flaws of people. It's one of the biggest pitfalls people have. And that's why I wanted to do it for this episode, because if you can understand motivation in your life and understand discipline, where motivation comes from, how it shows up in your life. Now I'm almost embarrassed when I'm motivated, right? It's almost like a childish feeling, and you're like, oh man, I kind of look at myself in the third person a bit, and you try and neutralize that feeling. Do you know what I mean? Because it's a bit like, that's not very stoic of me to be excited about something,
Awesome. So look, it wouldn't be fair of us to kind of do an episode on this without kind of sharing some of our own insights or beliefs, or tips, or what we've found to help us along the way. Because obviously we're not perfect, but something I always say to people that's helped me with motivation is, it's all good having motivational videos, and it's all good like setting goals. That's great. And as long as you're setting goals for motivation that are in alignment with who you really are, that is going to light something inside of you. If you really, really love cars and you love the F1 and you want a Lamborghini and that is your motivation, and you want to prove someone wrong who said you'll never have one and all that kind of stuff, brilliant, right? But as Seb says, and I know this from investing in the markets, we're more fearful than we're greedy. So the best thing is write a list of all of those, make sure they're in alignment with yourself. And then the next thing is write a list of how painful your life would be if you don't get it. Like, write a massive list of all the things that your life would be like hell if you just didn't have the thing, or how, to what degree your quality of life will shift downwards if, as a result of you not achieving the thing, and start writing those down. And that's where the motivation starts to light a fire inside of you.
Do you know what? Having one of the ways you can do that if you're listening to this is you get a piece of paper, right? And at the top of the piece of paper, just write the 5 goals you've got, right? Or detail the ultimate life you want to live and the things you want to achieve. Split the paper in half, and then on the one side, bottom left, you write those things, how great your life would be if you did that. And then on the bottom right, write all the things how terrible your life would be if you didn't do that. What a waste of life that would be. How you would lack so much pride and you wouldn't have used your life properly, and all the negative things. And a lot of it it's a very personal thing, but have that all written down, right? And then stick that on your wall and make sure you just glance over it all the time. And then you've got a constant reminder, both negative and positive, of that motivation, the push and the pull. And it's something I use actually when I have to make a big decision in life, right? I'll get a piece of paper and I dive into the negative. People avoid the negative. But if you look at some of the most courageous cultures out there, the Vikings, the samurai, they all studied death, right? The worst thing that could happen to them. They studied. They were experts, and they visualized it. They meditated on it, right? And they would dive into it. And so when someone has to make a big decision, for me, or they go something really hard, I say to them, look, get a piece of paper out and write down everything that could go wrong, right? The worst case, detail it. Health issues, economic issues, relationship issues, everything down on that one piece of paper. And then don't get up from that table. And I did this during COVID, and we actually did a podcast on this. And I did this during COVID, right? And it was amazing, a relief. So don't get up from that table until you've completely accepted that this is your new life. This disaster of a piece of paper in front of you is your new life, right? And then take that piece of paper, turn it over, and write down exactly what you would do if that was your life. So here's the plan, right? Here's the plan if that all happens. So now you've got this piece of paper with the worst case scenario, worst possible case, disaster, what I call a personal Armageddon, and you've got a plan for what to do with it. open your drawer, stick it in your drawer, shut your drawer. Don't turn off your camera. Shut your drawer, and then from that position there, you can now focus purely on the positive, right? Like you've parked all the negativity, you've parked all the worry or concern or scarcity mindset. Now all you need to do is think about the future, and you can just plan completely proactively for that. So that's another really good motivational thing, because a lot of people, they're terrified of what could go wrong, and it paralyzes them. But that's a good way to overcome it and accept it and use that as motivation, but park it so that you can then focus on all the things that could go right. And that's something I've worked with people, and it's really worked very, very well.
Amazing. And also it keeps you balanced as your values change or your motivations change through life. You're not going to beat yourself up because you're not, you can't remember why you wanted it, or, you've got a list there to go, oh, actually, it's not so bad. I thought I wanted that. I don't want that anymore. Or I don't mind if my life looks like that bit anymore. And it kind of just keeps you a bit more neutral. And that brings us on to discipline, which I think is really great. In that list, the way to keep discipline is to not try to have large, lofty goals as daily habits. You want to break everything down into tiny, tiny little pieces, right? Toyota, the Kaizen philosophy, just 1%, tiny little things, little to-dos, little tasks. Sorry, what was you going to say, Seb?
Exactly that. The beauty of that is you actually stick to it, right? And what I've learned with training, especially in the last year, it's because I'm the sort of guy who, I love big, massive action and just being like, cool, let's just go for it, and all this, and kicking down the doors and just getting it done. But what I've learned is that doing little steps consistently for a longer period of time means that instead of going up and down and getting there, it's less of a bounce between the positive and the negative and the up and the down, but it is more consistency, and over a long period of time, believe it or not, that the compounding effect of that is greater. And so one of the ways that I do that, and this is, if you're a character like me at all, where you've got quite an extreme personality, then this is very, very useful. You need accountability in your life. And from a business point of view, I've got people who advise me, who say to me, you need to push it or you've gone too far, right? And I'll bounce ideas past them. And I do the same thing with personal training. So I've got someone who monitors every single thing I eat and every single day that I train, they monitor all of that. And often they're there to say, now's not the time to push it. Now's the time to do a deload where you can just work at 50%, same movements, but 50%, right? And then next week, guess what? All your lifts are up more than they were 2 weeks before.
Yeah.
In the same way, with everything in your life, bringing accountability into that makes a massive difference. And the way I kind of see it is when you fly a plane, you're flying from London to Paris or something, right? From one location, point A to point B. The systems in the cockpit will tell you if you're on track or off track. It's as binary as that. It's 1 or 0. And for a lot of people, it becomes such a grey area. Going from one place to another place, all these things could change. But if you've got the simple playbook of 3 or 4 metrics which you measure, let's say it's your health, sleep, steps, right? Your 4 meals a day, your protein intake, and maybe you've hit the gym and done weights, right? If those are the 5 things that you measured and that was it, you have this perfect repeatable week, and it's like you're either on track or you're off track with that, and your accountability tells you you're off track with sleep or you're on track. You can have devices and software and AI to help you with that as well if you want, but it's having that team around you which brings you back on track all the time, so you never go too far off piste. You're always like, okay, you touched, you're never going to be always perfect, right? So you're either a little bit off or a little bit too far, a little bit behind, but basically you're kind of as close to the line as you can. And for me, that's a really powerful way to improve the discipline in your life, especially if you're not used to sticking to the daily habit routines of the things you say.
Absolutely. There's a great diagram which we'll chuck on the screen here of 2 ladders, and the first ladder, someone's trying to reach up to the first rung on the ladder and they can't reach it, right? And it's this tall ladder, and on the other ladder the rungs are like really tiny incremental rungs, and the person's like flying up the ladder, and the first person like hasn't even reached the first rung because it's so lofty, it's so high. And what I find is if you do break things down and you just make a start, you can actually be less busy than the person trying to do the big thing and get more done. You just do a few things a day. So I would say, whatever it is you're working on in your business now, or you're thinking about starting, or you want to do a podcast or whatever it might be, break it down and just pick one lofty thing, and then break that down into kind of 7 to 10 areas or action steps, and then break each of them down into like 10, 20 to-dos, little tiny little tasks, and start smashing your way through those. And over 90 days, you've basically got 90 days to smash off a load of tiny little to-dos that will take you, some will take you 5 minutes, some will take you a second, some will take you half hour, some will take you 2 hours. But by doing it that way, it removes overwhelm and it gets you encouraged to, you're making progress. And guess what? By the end of the 90 days, if you haven't finished the goal, you're a hell of a lot further than you would have if you'd, if you're trying to sit there thinking about how the hell am I going to do this big thing. So that's what I'd recommend.
Yeah, definitely agree with you. Less is more, right? Simplicity is the key to brilliance. If you want to achieve your goals, it's about doing less of the less important stuff and in really simplifying what it's going to mean to take you somewhere. And that typically comes down to a set of 3 to 5 metrics, which you do every single day and you stick to, and you kind of hold yourself accountable to, and you're kind of almost religious in the way that you pursue those metrics, right?
Yeah. And then the beauty of all this is it's self-fulfilling. It's like the more you tick off, the more disciplined you become, the more bigger beliefs you have in your motivation of getting your goal, and it's just a spiral upwards from there. So I hope this has been valuable. I think it would have been valuable to me if I hadn't figured some of this stuff out over the years and lost a lot of hair and gained some wrinkles doing it. Like I don't profess to know it all, and I'm always open to learning. So if you guys have got anything to share in the comments as well, I'd love to hear what you do to stay disciplined and to get, to keep the motivation on track. And yeah, let us know what other topics you want us to discuss. Seb, have you got anything else to add?
All I would say from this is, if you listen the whole way through this episode, what are the 3 things that you can implement from this episode to increase, your discipline, to take massive action if you need motivation, but basically just stay consistent? What are the 3 things? Maybe write that in the comments, right? Like if you're watching this, write in the comments the three things.
Let us know. Yeah, what are the 3 takeaways? That would be awesome. All right, cool. Well, that is it again. I want you guys to think of this as like we're just a bunch of entrepreneurs and business owners ranting. Like we've gone around the coffee cooler or water cooler or whatever, just grab a drink and just join us for this each week and get involved with the community. So I hope you enjoy it. We enjoy talking about this stuff. So until next time, take care, have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next one.
If you're enjoying these podcasts, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're really getting value from these, we'd really love it if you could let us know on our review page. We'll see you next week.